I think some of my favorite videos that I've done so far, as well as some of my favorite graphic novels when it comes to modern reading, would have to be The Ice Cream Man. I think it's a book that really shows a lot of promise, with the first volume being pretty random. I think the more and more that you get through this, and the more lore that it kind of builds for itself, meant it to be something incredibly interesting, something that is along the lines of it, while actually bringing in another entity that can actually battle this mystical beast, this creature that is just kind of tainting towns, and worlds, and galaxies afar. And it's definitely something that I've been wanting to get into more. As with the first 3 videos that I've done, we mostly just met Rick the Ice Cream Man. Well, today we are actually going to be coming across a new patron, a man who is actually trying to defy him, and a man who is actually related to this cold entity. And while you may be asking exactly who this man must be, well, actually, it's something that I left out of my Halloween special video, the last story that it can be found in volume 1, and the reason I did so is because I had absolutely no idea where the story was going to go with this thing. And I think the best way to actually describe who this person is to go all the way back to the origins of Ricardo the Ice Cream Man and Caleb, his cousin. 2 entities that have actually existed throughout all time and space, and 2 forces that are totally opposite, one creating these terrifying little incidents inside this town, and one that is slowly trying to stop all this. It's with a tale called Western Story, as we see this man all clad in all black just kind of strolling throughout these desert plains in a world that is not our own, and a world that seems to be a pre-version of this, something that is getting him ready for what's to come next, and probably the earliest sighting that we've ever seen Rick the Ice Cream Man and Caleb the Cowboy. Longer ago than there are numbers to express, see this world, it is not your own. Primitive place, dry, riddled with creosote, with chaparral, with old bones of fauna and flora long since erased from the magic Crossway Valley. And looking across this giant desert plain, where we will see the spider just kind of crawling across the desert floor. Now, what this says is that later on when we come back to our world, that this will eventually be called an arachnid. But right now, this will just be called some kind of pre-creature, a footnote for what will come later. And as it makes its way across the desert floor, suddenly an arrow comes out of nowhere and lands directly across from the spider. And with the turning of the page, we will finally be meeting Caleb the Cowboy. See him, dark-clad godman, head full of lightning, and in lightning there is light. And his ivory fang familiar, atavistic wolf beast, hungry for pupil, for iris, for humor. See them, but never truly understand. And as Caleb's giant wolf beast descends down on the spider, he merely tells him to go in for the kill. And as the wolf beast prepares for its next lunge, we see Caleb pulling out a giant lasso, wrapping it around the spider and taking it down to the ground as this dog suddenly clenches its teeth on the back of its head, letting out a viscous green material and inevitably ending the spider's life. Golly, this is the biggest yet, and it's just a baby. And as Caleb was looking at this giant monstrosity, something that is only going to grow and grow, we will soon learn that this is actually a creation of Rick the Ice Cream Man, or Ricardo, or his cousin, whatever this man wants to go by, has been unleashing all these different aberrations across his entire desert plain and kind of souping up his powers, getting ready for the terror that he would spread across the cities to come, across the worlds to come. And with this, Caleb doesn't really know what to do. But as he's looking down at this giant green creature, he pulls out his buck knife and eventually pulls this thing's eye out and he gives it to his dog. As for some reason this creature is absolutely obsessed with anything that blinks, he even says this later on, and apparently this is better than a dog treat, will be the wet iris of a giant spider. Eat quick, old man's waiting for us. Through the tangled mesas, out beyond the red-brown limits of this undocumented eon, the God-Man, storm under his hat, thunderclouds taking shape, travels an unwinding path. And as Caleb begins to make his way throughout the desert to meet his uncle that he's been talking about, we will come across all these different plants, from gypsum to rustweed, as well as these birds that once again are referred to as pre-birds, something that isn't actually made yet, something that isn't going to come until later on, and simply just an idea. And this is where I start to kind of think that maybe these different beings that we're about to meet are actually the creators of all these different living planets, of all these different creatures that we've all come to know throughout our lifetimes. And it's something that makes me very fascinated with this entire universe, as upon first reading these Ice Cream Man books, I would have never really guessed the depth that these things would go on as we get deeper and deeper into these graphic novels. And it's something that I very highly recommend as somebody who absolutely loves horror short stories, from Tales from the Crypt to obviously The Ice Cream Man to DC Halloween. I think this one lends itself to be the most interesting, as all the different stories that we are going to come across from this point onward only get more and more interesting. Seeing all these different characters in different positions, characters that we've already met, and new characters to come, it's just a book that gives and gives and gives with each different volume that you come across. And as he continues his travel, we start to get this monologue saying that you too eventually will come to travel this, as well as all paths are actually the same, all leading to the same destination in the end, this being the end of the road. And as we continue to watch Caleb go throughout this desert, we'll eventually come across his uncle, sitting out in the middle of this wasteland, a awaiting for the presence of his nephew. All the way out in the middle of nowhere. Sure ain't easy to get to you, old man. And yet here you are, like it's nothing at all. It's good to see you, nephew. Here, at the end of things. The end? End? Beginning? All the same. Come inside. Your cousin will be here soon. And as we follow Caleb and his uncle walk inside this building, we'll be greeted to all these different kind of alien plants. Once again, these pre-materials, these pre-creatures, and things that we haven't quite seen, yet something that we've maybe dreamed about. And as Caleb takes a seat, his uncle tells him that he has quite the quarry in the back of his wagon, meaning the giant spider that he killed earlier, and something that is only a baby, something that would grow to 10 times that size. And he says this is the biggest one that I've ever seen. That's cause you ain't. He's getting out of hand, uncle. Out of hand. Here, boy. Shank bone of the Zen beast. Good luck. That dog won't eat nothing unless it blinks. And as the uncle throws his bone down on the ground to the dog, it merely just decides to sniff it, not taking for its own, and across the room, we see Caleb and his uncle taking their own seats. As Caleb begins to tell him that he said it himself, that their magic is sacred, made of fragile life stuff. But Ricardus, he goes off and conjures these aberrations. Where'd you get a fancy word like that, huh? I thought I told you, Caleb. Everything is one thing. Each bastard of creation is a reflection of something true. Now ain't that a beautiful little buggy? And with somebody entering the door, this would actually be Ricardus himself, or Rick the Ice Cream Man, or the Undefiled, or whatever you want to call him. But as we walks in and we're seeing the plant that the uncle actually made evolve and grow into this different shape and form, they both look increasingly shocked, as we get to see Ricardus in his full glory, sitting in an old tailored coat, looking very western, and something that we'd see out of an old saloon. Caleb, uncle, sorry I'm late. Guess I lost track of time. And upon actually first seeing Rick the Ice Cream Man sitting in this old setting, we actually see these musical notes that we've seen throughout all the different stories wrapping around his hand, as now it would seem that this is actually a physical power, and not really just something symbolic for his ice cream truck. And as we'll come to see later on in this story, it is something incredibly powerful, and something that can be used for the worst deeds imaginable. Nephew, come in. We got business to discuss. Call off your mutt cousin. I don't tell him what to do. Stand down, doggy, or I'll make you into a coat. Enough. You boys need to listen up. We don't got much time. And with the uncle saying this, with the next couple of panels, we will see everybody sitting in a family reunion around this table, as we actually start to realize that these people can actually top into different dimensions, into different worlds, and that this is something that they've been doing for the entire time. Something so more deep and complex, like I said, I would have ever expected out of these books called The Ice Cream Man. I remember the first time seeing these on Amazon, not actually knowing exactly what they'd be about. I knew that it was going to be some form of horror story, but I figured it would just be some kind of like 1950s themed comic book story. And that is not really the case at all, and it's something that I'm very happy to see. Is what it actually turned out to be, ended up being one of my favorite modern graphic novel reads to begin with. But the uncle starts to talk about how the plants have been talking to the roots, and in turn the roots have been talking to the dirt. And with this, the dirt has talked back, and it has said, get out, quick. And it begins to say that they need to do what they've always done. Move out to the next one. Presumably the next world, to the next dimension, wherever the next one could possibly be. And with this, we actually see Rick the Ice Cream Man, or Ricardo for a more serious name, get a little bit agitated at this, asking why, and that he likes it here. And then suddenly we begin to see the change that we've seen in all the different books, into something a little more monstrous. My buggies feed on the bird things. What you like ain't important, kid. Time's up, and the two of you gotta go. In this here book is the rules for the next place. And the rules got but one rule. You follow them. Do I make myself plain? What about you? You're coming, right? I'm gonna be delayed. Your mother's asked me to look after y'all, so that's what I intend to do. Now, get, for I turn grumpier than I already am. And with these final words from the uncle, we see a young Ricardo, as well as Caleb the cowboy, beginning to leave the room. And with this, we actually get a glimpse of Ricardo just kind of picking on this cowboy, knowing that his deathly dealings are something that very much bothered this man, and something that he knows that Caleb would eventually like to stop. And we can see the negging between the two, as Ricardo wraps his arm around Caleb, and he begins to tell him that he wishes that he would play with him more, that out here, in these wastelands so far and in between, that things just get so lonely. And before exiting this building, we see the uncle look over to Rick, with sadness and tears in his eyes, and he merely tells him that he needs to have a word with him before they both eventually leave. And with the next few panels, we're just going to be seeing Caleb the cowboy just kind of playing with his wolf beast, just kind of enjoying the last moments of this planet, and actually trying to savor everything that they've seen here, as he doesn't really know what is going to be happening with the next one, and he doesn't really know what a life without his uncle just kind of keeping the peace between him and Ricardo is going to be like. See this moment. It is the last of its kind. Simple pleasure scene. Unspoken love between God-man and animal. See the dog fetch the eye. It is your eye. Do you see with your eye? Or do you close your eye? Close your eye. Close your eyes. Close. And with this last beautiful day between the wolf beast and Caleb the cowboy, we see sun turn into moon, and the darkness begins to surround them as they both fall asleep next to this fireplace, and the flames and embers eventually burn out. When suddenly we begin to see Ricardo's musical notes start appearing, leading to probably the first sighted moment when we can obviously see that Ricardo is not a good man. And obviously we've seen him torment people throughout all the different stories that we've done so far, but this is one where we can see the pure psychopathy and the enjoyment of his cousin's pain. Somebody who he wants to be closer with, yet wants to slowly destroy his soul and destroy his happiness all at once. And as the sun begins to rise, Caleb the cowboy eventually wakes up. And as he stands, he begins to wonder where his wolf beefs went off to. Stepping away from the tree that they both fell asleep on, he begins to call out in the middle of the field. And as he's calling and calling for the wolf beast to come to him, he stops mid-sentence, and as he looks out into the middle of this field, he sees something that is going to turn his stomach to gruel. It was so cold, but now I'm all toasty and warm. What did you do to my goddamn dog, Rick? I did what the geezer told me to do. He showed me the book, Caleb, the rules. And the rules say, kick up dust. Be the bug crawling beneath the surface. All worlds are covered in bugs. Some are just bigger than others. You'll see, like the old man did. And as we get this terrible scene of Ricardo the ice cream man actually standing with this wolf beast pelt wrapped around his head, something that he did out of pure spite for Caleb the cowboy, and something that I find so incredibly evil, but at the same time a very interesting origin story, and something that will kind of explain the duel that we will see later on in all the different volumes of this book. But as Ricardo continues to giggle to himself, he holds a spider up to Caleb's face, one of these aberrations that he's created, one of these things that he's been using to kind of infest this entire world. Caleb looks down at it and he knows that something terrible has happened to his uncle, and with this he gets on his horse and he races away as Ricardo the ice cream man begins to go on a rhyme about Mother Mary full of legs. She's hungry for super, cousin. See this world. It is not your own. Lonely place. Ugly. On its last leg. Made of fragile life stuff. And as we see Caleb stopping at his destination, he looks off in the distance, and the only thing that we see is another one of Ricardo's aberrations. Another spider big as a skyscraper, and penetrated on the end of one of its legs is actually their uncle, bleeding from his chest and draining life every moment that goes by. And upon Caleb seeing this, he springs into action, pulling out his lasso and trying to tie it around the top of this creature and climbing to the very tops of his head before he is actually thrown to the ground. Remember, in lightning there is light. Stubborn critter. Fine then, don't blink. See these creatures and understand fully. They are imperiled, as are we all. And as we watch the spider come crashing down and Caleb rushing over to his uncle dying on the ground, he holds him in his arms. And the one thing that his uncle says is on to the next one. Everything is one thing. And with these final words, this will be the last phrase ever spoken by Caleb and Ricardo's uncle. And I'm almost wondering if he actually knew that this was going to happen the entire time. If he knew that Caleb's form of chaos would actually be his downfall eventually. And honestly, it's a character that I would have liked to see more fleshed out, and I'm hoping the farther I get down these volumes, the farther back this story will continue, as I really hope that this isn't the first origin story to begin with, that the history of these three beings will continue to go down and down and down further in history, as with the next couple of volumes we get to go way on into the future. We actually get to follow Caleb and Ricardo actually leave planet Earth and actually head on to the next one once again. And while this is absolutely fantastic, the thing I'm kind of looking forward to in this is actually seeing what these creatures are, where they came from, who made them, and how long they've actually been around. But this is just something that we're going to have to see further on as we continue to read these books. But with this tragic passing of Caleb's uncle, we'll begin to see the burial of this man as Caleb makes his way to eventually leave and move on to the next one. Everything is one thing. The plants take root and speak to the dirt, and the dirt in turn speaks back. And it's saying, go. And so we do, meeting someday at that place where all paths come to a single point. I guess I'll see you in the next one, Rick. And as we see Caleb leaving this burial ground, we see these musical notes coming out of a giant canyon behind him. And this would inevitably be the end of our story. Something that I found really good and something that I hope you all enjoy and actually kind of learn a little bit of the lore here with me as we will continue to tell some of these stories going forward. And I thought it was very interesting to kind of cut away from the town that we've been seeing this entire time be tormented by Rick the Ice Cream Man, and to actually see kind of some of these family members, about these other characters of these interdimensional beings. And like I said earlier, this story is just reminding me more and more and more of Stephen King's It, with Ricardo being the clown itself, and possibly Kalo being the giant turtle that is kind of just holding everything up, keeping everything in the light, and keeping this other harrowing creature in check, always afraid. And overall, I think it was just the absolute perfect way to start Volume 2. Now, you can get these things for about $16, and each one has about 4 or 5 stories. And I gotta say, if you enjoy these videos on the Ice Cream Man, please go out and purchase these, as these people very much deserve your money. And seeing that they're not just going to be constant short stories that aren't connected at all, just going and going and going, and actually getting kind of a mythological tale about 2 beings who have been around since the beginning of time, since the beginning of space, since the beginning of dust and blood. I think it's just an incredible story that everybody deserves to see, especially if you're somebody who enjoys graphic novels whatsoever, and specifically for people who enjoy the horror genre. But anyways, everybody, I hope you found that as interesting as I did. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic way to start this book, and if you are kind of new to this channel or you've never seen any of the other previous videos, please go check out some of the other Ice Cream Man tales, as they're very good. I personally would recommend my Halloween special that I did last Halloween, as that was probably the best story out of the entire first volume, at least for me. The other one about the junkies I thought was also very good, but I would be very interested to actually hear in the comments which one of my videos was your guys' favorite. Which one of these franchises would you like to see me continue? Or would you like me to continue and just keep finding new and newer stuff? But anyways, everybody, this has been From the Heart with another story from the Ice Cream Man, and like I said, I do hope you enjoyed it. If you are new here, please hit that subscribe button. Please go talk to some people down in the comments or me. It would help out this channel very much. And I will see you guys on the next episode as we continue the dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the world of horror stories, comic books, and all sorts of different things. Have yourself a fantastic day, and be very wary of any Ice Cream Man that we start to begin to see throughout this entire summer.